How's it going, YouTube? It's BraxtonComix here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys the start of my deck profiles for August of 2015. This is going to be Heroic Challengers. Now, before you guys click away off of this video, I'm completely aware of the fact that this is not going to be able to compete with any of the meta. This is more of a fun deck than anything, so if you're looking for something non-competitive, then this is probably one of the better builds for you. But I do have another build that's coming out pretty soon that's even better, basically. But I just like the archetype heroics I have for a while. I don't like how many problems they have with the archetype, though, and I'll go through them once I go through the deck. And there are a couple of cards that I'm missing in the extra deck, but they're easily replaceable and actually able to get pretty easy. So we're going to go ahead and get into the main deck. It's a pretty interesting build, I have to say the least. So we're going to start off with 3 copies of Assault Halberd. This is kind of your best guy in the entire deck because he searches you out any heroic card you want, but I'm only playing heroic monsters, so it really doesn't matter. And he's your Cyber Dragon for the deck, so you don't waste your normal summon on him. Probably the most recognizable heroic of this format, because of Clown Blade, is the 3 Heroic Challenger Thousand Blades. Thousand Blades is your Summoner Monk for the deck at the cost of discarding a heroic card. And again, it's mostly monsters, so as long as you draw into at least one of this guy and maybe 2 or 3 other heroics, you can make Run Gaminiad turn 1 pretty easily. This next one actually took honestly too long for me to get in the mail, and I didn't have them sitting around in my tins of commons and rares, and that is 3 copies of Heroic Challenger Double Lance. Double Lance is good because you can make him go into an Xyz turn 1 if you have multiples at hand, and you normally would. He's a 17 beater, which is okay, but the fact that he only can be used for the Xyz summon of Warrior-type monster worries me. But we have a lot of Warrior-type monsters in this extra deck, but they're not the best. I'm going to say that now, so be aware of that. Next up, 3 copies of Heroic Challenger Extra Sword. This guy is in here simply for the sole purpose to give an Xyz monster is used as Xyz material 1,000 extra attack. And that's really nice, and that can help power up Rangaminiad even better so your opponent can't Yu-Gi-Oh! Against it. And finally, the only other Heroic Challenger we play in this deck is 3 copies of Sword Shield. He is kind of the hand trap for the deck, and he has a couple problems that I should discuss. His effect reads that during either player's turn, if you control a face-up heroic monster, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. For the rest of the turn, you take no battle damage, and heroic monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. So, hypothetically, that does sound alright. However, because of how the format has changed in recent months, this thing is pretty bad, considering the fact that it doesn't protect you from card effect damage or your heroic guys from being destroyed by card effects. So, if things come to worse, he's a 2k wall if you absolutely need to, but a lot of times I chain him to like a Raigeki or a Dark Hole if my opponent does that, so I don't take battle damage for the rest of the turn. And then finally, 1 copy of Photon Thrasher and a Goblinberg. These are kind of just tech choices I put in the deck. There's one other card I'm going to talk about, besides Photon Thrasher, that I will cut for another monster, and that's Blue Mountain Butterspy. It's basically a Kage to Kage for Warrior-type monsters, and I would honestly cut this and one of the spell cards I'm going to talk about in a few minutes for 2 copies of the Butterspy. So that's it for the monsters. Alright then, for the spells, Raigeki, because it's fun to blow up your opponent's cards. Soul Charge, this deck can absolutely die without this. And this is the next card that I will honestly cut out for a second Morpho Butterspy, but since I don't have one, I'm playing Solidarity. Solidarity is cool because just about every monster in the deck is warrior base, and the extra 800 can really help with a bunch of the guys that you summon, because a lot of them don't have the best attack, and that really hurts. Next up, 2 copies of Instant Fusion, or as I like to call it, the Instant Salt. We don't have Norden yet, that's still about a month away, but in this build, it really doesn't matter. Norden is nice, don't get me wrong, it's good in just about any rank 4 toolbox. But for heroics, not as much as you guys may think. Next up, 2 copies of Lance, good for protection on the battle phase. 3 Excuse me, wow, that failed. 3 copies of MST, because you can't have enough backrow protection, and then finally 3 copies of Reinforcement of the Army. So that's basically it for the spells. Again, I would cut the Solidarity for the second Blue Mountain Butter Spy. Next up for the traps. 3 copies of Fiendish Chain. Fiendish Chain is like the dominant trap card of the entire format, I think, just because it stops your opponent's guys from declaring attacks, effects negated. I never know why I like Breakthrough Skill so much, probably just because of its rarity, but Fiendish Chain is, I think, far superior. Next up, double Mirror Force, just the original. These should be Storming Mirror Forces, honestly, since this is Clash of Rebellion. If I had my second copy of Storming Mirror Force on hand, I would go ahead and bring you guys those instead of regular, but the original Mirror Force are okay, just not as good in this format. Next up, 2 copies of Call of the Haunted, which are really strong in this deck, I think. You can't get enough of your guys back without this card. And then for the one-ofs, Compulsory Evacuation Device, Bottomless Trap Hole, and Ring of Destruction. I prefer Ring of Destruction over Solemn Warning, even though the spell speed is different, but it's good to get some burn damage off. For the extra deck, there's one card that I'm missing in the extra deck, which I'll get to in a minute, and there's something else I would cut in the extra deck for something else, so I'll get to that as well. So we're going to start off with our 2 instant fusion targets, which are 2 Carbonal Warrior. Instant fusion targets, nothing more, nothing less. Again, if Norden was a warrior type, this deck would be so much more supportive. But it's a fairy, so I can't change that. Next up, 3 copies of the boss monster for Heroics 3, Rongaminiad, number 86. This guy is the one I was talking about that I would cut down to 2. Simply because you're not always making it, and I think 2 is more necessary simply because you're not always making it as fast as you normally would, hypothetically. So I would honestly cut it for like a Satellarknight Deltaros, which I think is very, very good. But just about any rank 4 I think you can make, it would heavily change out the third Rongaminiad. 2 Gundiva, which is kind of my favorite of the heroic champions, simply because it stops your opponent's guys from being special summoned if it's level 4 or lower. So that can stop their rank 4 Xyz plays if they're... Like, if you're going up against Clownblade, this thing is probably really good, because Trick Clown is obviously level 4, and that can put a stop to their Xyz's turn whatever. So he's really... Gundiva is really nice. And then for the one-ofs, Excalibur and Kusanagi. Kusanagi is another one I'd probably cut. Excalibur, I don't think this deck would be Heroics without Excalibur. And then for the rest of the extra deck, really, 1 Blade Armor Ninja, because attacking twice is nice. Same thing with Gagia Samurai. I like having the option of going for either of these, simply because one of them can get Bottomless Trap Hold, Ring of Destruction, Solemn Warning, anything like that, and I can always have a backup double attacker later on. And I really like that. And to go along with the Gaga Cowboy for that burn damage, 2 Castell. I don't have a second one on hand, but this deck can't function without Castell, so I'm going to put that out there. This deck needs 2, just about. And with extra sword, it can become a 3k beater, and that's really nice. And then finally, Dark Rebellion, Xyz Dragon, because I think any rank 4 toolbox can agree that this card has seen a lot of growing popularity in recent years. Actually, not even years, it's only a few months old. But the point is, Dark Rebellion is good in some way, shape, or form. So, I don't think that was a complete extra deck, other than the fact that I'm missing the second Castell, but it's getting reprinted in the Megatin, so that's pretty cool. But otherwise, guys, this has been my heroic deck profile. I hope you guys liked it. I mean, I do too, but it still faces a lot of problems. If the deck had some problem-solving cards, I could keep up with the format. This deck would be so much more amazing, and I would have everything I need on hand. But since it can't, the deck is trash unless you're playing for fun or if you're on a budget. So, that is it, YouTube. If you at least gave a crap to watch this video through to the end, please like this video, because I know you guys will show support. And subscribe to my channel, because I'll have more deck profiles up pretty soon. And leave a comment down below on your thoughts for this deck. But I'm pretty sure they're going to be crap. So thank you all so much for watching. I'm BraxtonComix, signing out.